Hi, welcome back to my class, Cross-Cultural Understanding. With me, Andreas Yulianto from Jakarta International University. Um, Today, we are going to discuss the topic in the chapter 10, Intercultural, Interpersonal Relationships. Let's begin our discussions with the learning objectives. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to first define what is meant by an intercultural, interpersonal relationship. Second, identify and describe 10 categories of intercultural, interpersonal relationships. And the third, discuss how society influences intercultural, interpersonal relationships. The fourth, identify the benefits of intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Fifth, identify and describe 3 types of social networks. Sixth, describe cultural differences in the notions of friendship. 7. Describe the contact hypothesis and its implications for intercultural and interpersonal relationships. 8. Identify internal and external factors that facilitate or hinder intercultural and interpersonal relationship. And the last, identify constructive ways to nurture intercultural and interpersonal relationships. All right, now let's start with the introductions of this course, with this chapter especially, with the idea is that meaningful communications with other human beings is essential for our physical and mental health. No matter what part of the world we live in, forming intimate relationships is a vital element in life. All right, the ideas explains us that we have to have a meaningful communication as it is essential for our physical and mental health. And we also form intimate relationships because it is a vital element in life. We are going to talk about the intimate relationships and also meaningful communications in today's meeting. These chapters also examine the connections between the interpersonal communications and intercultural relationships. We also will talk about the categories of intercultural, interpersonal relationships, as well as ties between people who differ in terms of social class, language, age, ability, so on and so forth. Yeah. Now let's start with the interpersonal communications and intercultural relationships. Beebe et al. 2010 explains that it is a special form of human communication that occurs when two people interact simultaneously and attempt to mutually influence each other, usually for the purpose of managing relationships. All right, we regularly meet many people and we try to establish a good relationship with them. And of course, we are different from them. They have their own characteristics, habits, and so on and so forth, and the same as us. So these communications that occurs when two people interact simultaneously, it is called as interpersonal communication. Right. Interpersonal communication skill is required in this communication. Yeah, this is the communication strategies and techniques that can be improved through knowledge, practice, feedback, and reflections. Yeah, an interpersonal relationship refers to the connections or affiliations between two or more people which fulfills physical, social, or emotional needs. Right. An interpersonal relationships can be can vary in many ways, including the durations and intensity. Short-term relationships, where it consists of interpersonal connections that are very brief, just like a few weeks or months, or long-term relationships, which is intimate interpersonal affiliations that last many years and perhaps throughout one's lifetime. That is the interpersonal relationship. Compared with the previous decades, yeah, intercultural, interpersonal relationships such as friendship, dating, cohabitations, marriages involving people with different cultural or religious backgrounds have become much more commonplace and accepted in many parts of the world. While intracultural relationships, it is interpersonal bonds that form between individuals who share the same linguistic and cultural background. Or interracial relationships, interpersonal relationship between individuals from the same socially constructed racial groups. Well, we have two terms right now: intercultural, interpersonal relationships, and intracultural relationships. These two exist in our situations, in our environment. You know that interpersonal relationship here is built from people who are from different cultural or religious backgrounds, while the intracultural relationships, it is built from the same linguistic or cultural background or even religious background. Yeah, some countries may accept the intercultural, interpersonal relationships, but some are not. The same things as intracultural relationships. Some society, they also acknowledge and accept the intracultural relationships, but some might not. Yeah. Now let's discuss the crossing boundaries in intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Intercultural, interpersonal relationships can take many forms and cross one or more socially and historically constructed boundaries, such as race, class, language, religion. Jackson notes that people may develop affiliations with individuals from different ethnic, linguistic, national, racial, and religious background, or form bonds with those who differ in terms of such dimensions as age, ability, gender, social class, and sexual orientations. Well, in this chapter we'll discuss briefly the various types of intercultural relationships and provide examples of each. The first is the interracial, intercultural relationships. Race is the very common in our discussions in this class actually, and we have discussed a lot about race. Here, race refers to a large social yet powerful constructions of human differences that has been used to classify human beings into separate value-based categories. Interracial communications refers to interactions between two individuals in a situational context, yeah, where racial difference is a silent issue. Bonds between people from different racial groups are referred to as interracial, intercultural relationships. We discuss about race that it is used to classify human based on some categories, yeah, and these different races, they interact, they communicate. So this is the interracial communications. For example, a friendship between Black American and white American, or black man and white South African male would be also another examples of this. Yeah, or even like Australian Aborigine who forms a romantic attachment with a white Australian. These two as the examples of the interracial, intercultural relationships. Next is the ethnicity. Interethnic, intercultural relationships. So we are talking about the ethnicity. In the previous chapter, we learned about ethnicity. Ethnic. One's ethnicity can also impact on intercultural relations. Yeah, different from race, ethnicity is a cultural markers that indicates shared traditions, heritage, and ancestral origins. Yeah, and let's say someone may be considered as racially as Asian, but she is Japanese in terms of ethnicity. An African American from Puerto Rico, for example, may be categorized as black in terms of race, but be ethnically Hispanic. Yeah. Relationship between individuals affiliated with different ethnic groups are referred to as interethnic relationships. For example, the friendship between a French Canadian and a Canadian with Irish Scottish heritage, or a romance between Malaysian Singaporean and Chinese Singaporean would be deemed interethnic. In both examples, the interethnic relationships are between individuals from the same racial groups. Yeah. Interethnic relationship may also develop between people who are categorized as belonging to different differing races and ethnicities. Yeah. Now we also have the international, intercultural relationships. It is also the crossing boundaries in intercultural, interpersonal relationships. What is international, intercultural relationships? All right, relationships that develop between people that bridge national culture and citizenship lines are referred to as international relationships. Many international intercultural relationships are interethnic, interracial, and also interreligious. Yeah, and international relationships often cross more than one social boundary. Yeah, we sometimes different religion, different ethnics, different race, different many things. Yeah, that is international intercultural relationships. Next is the interreligious intercultural relationships. It refers to the interpersonal connections between people with different religious orientations, such as ties between Buddhists, Christians, Hindus, Muslims, Jews, or other faiths, or even non-believers. And interfaith or interreligious friendships is categorized as an interpersonal relationship or friendship bond between individuals who are affiliated with a different religion. We are exposed regularly with these situations where people consider a lot about the differences based on the religious. And here, the communications, the relationship between different religions happens. And it is what we call as interreligious, intercultural relationships. Now, we talk about the social class differences in intercultural relationships. Multiculturalisms, globalizations, immigrations, traveling, and internet, of course, create more possibilities for the relationships between individuals who are who are different social background and status. Social class here refers to a social grouping of people based on a common economic and other characteristics determined by society and reflecting a social hierarchy. Individuals or groups have been divided into social classes that have been accorded different degrees of power, prestige, and influence, for example. Yeah. Let's say in India, the Hindu caste, for example, the Hindu caste systems, people were organized, recognized as belonging to one of the classes, the upper, middle, or lower class. Yeah. And yeah, the social markers here or the indicators of classes are still present and evolving. This context-dependent markers may include one's cultural background, accents, proficiency in another language, bilingualism, fluency in international prestigious language, wealth and income, new versus old money, materials, possessions, fancy car, large house, level and source of education, the prestige of one's occupations, racial or ethnic origin, the reputations of one's neighborhood, and so on. Social markers is something very common that we can experience in a particular cultures. Although it become much more feasible for bonds to form between individuals from different social classes. Negative views about these unions persist and can certainly hamper their development. Classism, prejudice, or discriminations can be happen on the basis of the social class. And we know that prejudice, discriminations, classism, social categorizations can be very harmful in intercultural, interpersonal communications and relationships. Now, language differences in intercultural relationships. While in interpersonal situations, whether we realize it or not, our speech and nonverbal behaviors can convey information about our social status, personality, temperament, group affiliations, and so on. Language plays a significant role in the formations and maintenance of our intercultural relationships. Whether our communications is primarily face-to-face, or maybe we can communicate on the phone or online, Skype, email, or text messaging. Yeah. Our communications partner continuously form impressions of us based on our language uses as well. As we speak, they are considering how to respond or proceed the informations that we share. So this process of intercultural, interpersonal relationships happens in based on the language differences. Sometimes we have different first language or second language, but we can share or we can speak together with the language that we agree to use. Yeah, and in the conversations, our speech can build and demonstrate a solidarity with our communications partner, or it can lead to misunderstanding or miscommunications, conflict, or even separations. Previously, we have talked about this. And the communications accommodation theory posits that individuals may adjust their language use or patterns such as choice of accents or dialect styles of communications to bring them closer to or further apart from their interlocutors. We also discussed about the convergence and divergence, where convergence refers to the ways in which individuals adapt their communicative behaviors in order to reduce social differences between themselves and their conversations partners. So we are trying to adjust our style. We are trying to adapt our communicative or communications behaviors so that we can reach the differences, the gap between ourselves, themselves, and their conversations partners. While the divergence refers to distancing of oneself from one's interlocutors by accentuating differences in one's speech or nonverbal behaviors. So here, whether deliberate or not, as one might expect, act of divergence can hamper the development of interpersonal relationships. Yeah, because distancing of oneself from one's interlocutor is the choice, is the things that the divergence work on. Yeah. Nowadays, people frequently form between people who speak a different first language or dialect. And in many parts of the world, English becomes a lingua franca. Yeah, and it is the medium of communications between people who do not have the same first language. It is the medium of communications. And also English is also the most dominant language of international communications. So that's why people, even they do not share the same first language, they can still interact one and another using the lingua franca. Now, the other crossing boundaries in intercultural and interpersonal relationship is the age differences in intercultural relationships. Outside one's family circle, children tend to form close interpersonal bonds with peers. That is, those who are near in age, in education, and also social class. Yeah, as they naturally spend much of their time together during their school, for example, or when people enter the workplace and gain more exposure to other social circles, either in a face-to-face situations or online friendships or romance, may form with individuals who are from different generations. It is the degree of acceptance or non-acceptance of the age difference may depend on the nature of the bond and the gender involved, as well as the other dimensions. In Asia, as well as in Western nations, it is not unusual for older white males to marry considerably younger Asian women. It is rare, however, for young white males to marry older Asian women. But is it possible to be happen? In other cultures, in other country, yeah, it is possible. And here, age differences as the boundaries, crossing boundaries in intercultural, interpersonal relationships, age differences in intercultural relationships. Next is the ability differences in intercultural relationships. The way society views people with disabilities such as physical handicaps, cognitive impairment, and mental illness influence the interpersonal relationships that disabled individuals form with members of the community who are not disabled. In some contexts, in some situations, formal education emphasizes the acceptance of people who are disabled and have been adapted to safeguard their rights. Whereas in other cultures, the disabled are shunned by the majority. This is resulting in differing opportunities for relationship to form between able-bodied individuals and those who are disabled. At the end, these ability differences shaped to or results to either social inclusions or social exclusions. Social inclusions refers to the act of giving all people in a society or physical and disability, race, language, culture, gender, and so on. Yeah, the people in this society, what is that? Give an opportunity to participate. They are given an opportunity to participate irrespective of their background or status. So they are involved in a regular activity. While the social exclusions, it is the opposite behavior, where there is a differentiation. It is a bearing individuals or groups from participating in one's activity. Yeah. So sorry with this. Gender differences also becomes the crossing boundaries in intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Gender can also impact on intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Yeah. Relationships between males and females in intercultural relationships are complicated, and in intercultural or interracial unions, even more so, as the partners have been socialized in different linguistic and cultural environment. In the previous chapters, we talk about the differences in the language patterns and the use. Yeah, self-identities, expectations, roles and responsibilities, even status, power and positioning, and this all can influence interpersonal relationships. Yeah, that is formed between men and women in a particular cultural context. Next is the social, sexual orientations and intercultural relationships. Intercultural, interpersonal relationships may also form between individuals who have a different sexual orientations. Yeah, sexual orientation is a term frequently used to describe a person's romantic, emotional, or sexual attractions to another person. We know such terms such as homosexual, gay, heterosexual orientations, or bisexual. What is homosexual? It is a person attracted to another person of the same sex. Yeah, let's say gay, between men and the same sex, or even lesbian individuals, which it is the persons or the individuals attracted to a persons of the other sex. It is what we call as the heterosexual orientation. So gay is the individuals attracted to the same sex, men and a man, and lesbian is the same sex between women. Yeah, and heterosexual orientation is the individuals attracted to a persons of other sex. Yeah, sexual orientation falls along to a continuum, and individuals who are attracted to both men and women are said to be bisexual. So it is also possible to find people who prefer or uh, um, prefer to have relationships between with both male and female. Yeah, so the sexual orientations, these individuals are attracted to both men and women. Multiple intercultural, interpersonal, multiplex intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Intercultural interpersonal relationships often involve multiple cultural differences and the crossing of more than one socially and historically constructed boundary, such as age, class, language, ethnic, national, racial, regional, religious, and sexual orientations. In England, for example, a wealthy middle-aged Muslim businessman from Pakistan may meet and develop a romantic relationship with an ethnic Chinese immigrant. A 30-year-old Christian woman from a lower middle-class family in Malaysia. So these multiplex intercultural, interpersonal relationships also involve multiple cultural differences. All right, now let's talk about the benefits of intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Oh, there is a benefits of these intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Developing connections with individuals who are different from oneself in terms of age, language, gender, ethnicity, race, ability, sexual orientations, religion, social class, and nationality. Of course, these situations can enrich one's life in multiple and often in unexpected ways. Potential benefits include, but are not limited to, heightened self-awareness, more understanding of other ways of being, the breaking down of stereotypes, more sensitivity towards identity issues, the acquisitions of new skills and pursuits, the refinement of one's intercultural, interpersonal communication skills, and more appreciations of diversity. The first benefit is the heightened self-awareness. Intercultural relationships can raise awareness of the many ways in which the socialization process has shaped your life, such as attitude, values, and beliefs, and self-identities. It can also enhance our awareness, yeah, of our languages and communication style, both verbal and non-verbal. When we develop the relationship with someone from another cultural, linguistic, or even religious background, we are apt to be exposed to different values, communication styles, cultural script, for example, and even the language or dialect. Yeah. So this can raise our awareness of the many ways in which the socialization process has shaped our life. We can raise awareness of the attitude, values, and belief and self-identities. Next is the more understanding of different ways of being. Yeah, when you develop a personal connections with someone from another linguistic and cultural background, you are apt to gain exposure to new ways of thinking, acting, and communicating, such as unfamiliar worldviews, daily practices, linguistic expressions, and communication styles. Right. Over time, we may develop a deeper understanding of what it really means to speak another language and be affiliated with another group. For example, linguistic, religious, or ethnic. So when we have intercultural, interpersonal relationships, the benefit is that we can have more understanding of different ways of we develop a personal connection with someone from different linguistic and cultural background. Apart from the understanding of different ways of being, the other benefit is the breaking down of the stereotypes. Intercultural, interpersonal relationships may compel you to critically reflect on how your home environment and personal experience have influenced your perceptions and attitudes toward people who are different. So sometimes we are assuming about a characteristic of certain individuals without a reasons or without any evidence, because what we hear from people, what we receive from the people's message about a particular perceptions, we are influenced by all of them. But then by intercultural, interpersonal relationships, we experience the real situations and we know the truth about a particular people. So of course, it can break down the stereotypes that exist around us. And the other benefit is that we become more sensitive towards identity issues. Through sustained intercultural interactions, you may discover which facets of your identities become salient and different contexts. So if you are observant and have developed listening skills, actually we may also uncover clues about the preferred self-identities of our communications partners. This awareness, of course, can help us to understand how our intercultural friends or romantic partners feel themselves and their place in the world. So these discoveries can enhance our interpersonal connections, of course. Yeah. And next is the acquisitions of new skills and pursuits. Interpersonal, intercultural relationships can introduce you to clubs, organizations, and a range of activities that might otherwise be unknown to you. Exposure to novel situations and practices offers the opportunity to learn a new hobby or skills. Yeah, without our intercultural friends and or a romantic partner opening the door for you, of course we may miss out these delights. Yeah, so this intercultural, interpersonal relationships here give us the chance to acquire new skills, new situations, new environment, new activities that might be unknown previously. Yeah. And next is the refinement of intercultural, interpersonal relationships, the personal communication skills. Interpersonal communication is the primary way in which humans build, nurture, and transform relationships. To develop effective and meaningful interpersonal relationships, we need to develop communications competence. What is that? It is the ability to achieve one's goals in a manner that is personally acceptable and ideally acceptable to others. All right, the developing interpersonal affiliations with people who have different cultural background can also facilitate the enhancements of one's intercultural communication skills. Successful and meaningful relationships require effective interpersonal skills. Yeah, and when cultural differences are involved, it is a duty, it is imperative that we develop intercultural competence. It can also enhance the appreciations of the diversity. Finally, more exposure to people from different linguistic and cultural backgrounds, it is possible to gain more understanding and genuine appreciations of diversity, which is very significant as our world is becoming more interconnected. Accepting and embracing someone who is culturally and ethnically different from ourselves sets a positive example for others in our increasingly multicultural world. And the more we got the exposure to people from different linguistic and cultural background, the more we gain the understanding and the appreciations of the diversity. As we build intercultural relationships, develop more intercultural knowledge, and break down the stereotypes, we can share our new understanding and attitudes with those around us. In this way, we more open mindset, and our mindset can have positive impact on our friends, family, and colleagues. Yeah. Next is the intercultural friendship and social networks. In the migrations, travel, and also technologies enhance the opportunities for us to have intercultural friendship. Yeah, and intercultural friendship is a personal connections or affiliations forged between people who have a different cultural background. Increasingly, these interpersonal relationships entail the use of second language, or let's say lingua franca, yeah, by one or more of the friendship partners. Social networks here refers to the multiple web of relationships and individual contracts in a society with other people who he or she is bound to directly or indirectly by ties of friendship, kinships, or other social relationships. As more and more people are coming into contact with individuals who have a different background, we start to take a closer look of formations and quality of intercultural relationships. Through the technologies, the modern technologies right now, we can establish a good intercultural friendship with people all over the world. And we can build a social network with them. The intercultural friendship and social networks. Now we talk about the cultural perceptions of friendship. We learn from the proverbs in German proverbs. A life without a friend is a life without a son. In Persian proverbs, It is better to be in a chains with friends than to be in a garden with strangers. And Spanish proverb, life without a friend is like death without a witness. And a Greek proverb, it is better in times of need to have a friend rather than money. And life without friends is not worth living, in the Turkish proverb. What do these proverbs from different lands have in common? If we critically think of these proverbs, all of them point to the pivotal roles, friends. Yeah, all of them agree that friends play an important role in our lives. Yeah, no matter where we reside in the world, friendship matters. It is through friendship that we gain much needed practical and socio-emotional support. Yeah. A friendship also helps us to navigate the increasingly complex world in which we live. In situations where families are fragmented, close friendship can become even more crucial. So building a friendship is very important. Yeah. Through a friendship, we gain practical and emotional support and an important contributions to our personal identities. True, I do agree with this. Friendship also helps to integrate us into the public realm and act as a resource for managing some of the mundane and exceptional events that confront us in our lives. Unlike the relationships with family members or kinship bonds, yeah, friendship is more voluntary. Yeah, and within a particular context, linguistic sanctions as well as social norms and expectations play a role in determining who we form a friendship with and how. There is another things that we also need to consider to when we are building a relationship, a friendships. That is the linguistic sanctions and social norms and expectations. All right, we in a friendships we also are familiar with what the term of casual friend, a close friend, best friend. Yeah, and in situations in a particular cultures or environment, they differentiate the casual friend, close friend, and best friends. Not only just a friend, but they have different stages. Let's say a casual friends or acquaintance refers to someone you have been introduced to but do not know very well. It just we just say hello when we meet and engage in small talk. Yeah, like that. And a close friend refers to someone you can rely on to provide emotional support and perhaps lend a hand when needed. This relationship is more intimate, and you are up to share personal details about yourself. Yeah, and we also engage in a deeper level of conversations on a wide range of topics. Next is we have the best friends. Yeah, U.S. Americans may also designate one or more individual as their best friends. It is to indicate that they are especially close to them. So it is for special one. It is very close with a particular with heroes. Yeah. After we talk about the friendships, now we talk about the other things, that is language and intercultural cyber friendships. Communication that is facilitated by computer technology, such as the use of two or more network computers, are referred to as computer-mediated communications, or CMC. Yeah, communication that is facilitated by computer technologies, the use of two or more work computers, is referred to as computer-mediated communications. Here, the friendships can be also built, not only just because directly we meet people, but also can be formed, can be built using the CMC, computer-mediated communications. Here, technology and language, yeah, are changing the nature of interpersonal communications in much of the world. New communication technologies such as internet, email, social media are introduced rapidly. And we believe that these innovations are expanding the possibilities for the development and the maintenance of both intercultural intercultural relationships, especially among individuals who are able to converse in English or another international language. Here we know that we learn about the synchronous or asynchronous. It is an electric mail and computer conferencing by which senders encode in text messages that are relayed from senders' computers as receivers. In synchronous communications, such as Skype, chat rooms, yeah, all participants are online at the same time. Whereas the asynchronous communication, such as email, yeah, the receiver of an email message may not read it until several hours or days after it has been sent. So it's not always online the same time. Yeah. And you know that the rise of the internet has led to the development of a virtual community, as what we call as netizens. Yeah, netizens is the individuals who actively engage in online interactions. In addition to email, the emergence of social networking sites, SNS, such as Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, and LinkedIn, is making it possible to initiate and maintain interpersonal relationships online instead of relying solely on face-to-face communications or phone calls as in the years gone by. Everything is there, is around us. We have a lot of facilities to build relationships with people. We are not limited by the space. It's easy to communicate with people from different countries, even they are very far. Yeah. Now, building intercultural friendships and social networks. Intercultural friendships and social networks have identified a number of internal and external factors that facilitate the formations and maintenance of friendship bonds between individuals who are culturally different. Yeah. The wide range of elements play a role in determining the potential for these interpersonal relationships, including the potential, including proximity, social networks, similarity, attractions, personality, willingness to communicate, WTC, empathy, identity recognitions and validations, uncertainty reductions or anxiety management, disclosure, and relational intimacy, shared identity and relational maintenance, intercultural communications, competence, and social acceptance. A few of recent research on intercultural friendship reveals that this wide range of elements play an important role in determining the potential for these interpersonal relationships. Now let's discuss one by one. The proximity. What is proximity? Proximity is all intercultural, interpersonal relationships are affected by the affordances and constraints in one's environment. All right. To develop intercultural friendships, we first need to have the opportunity, right? The opportunity to have a close contact with people from different linguistic and cultural backgrounds. For example, if we study, live, or work in a multicultural, multilingual environment, or even in situations where, let's say, our bilingual environments, you are better to initiate the develop, and you better develop intercultural friendships than if you are a member of the majority culture and live in society that is much less diverse. Here, intercultural, the proximity here plays a role in the formations of intercultural alliances. With an increase of in CMC and SNS like Facebook, it becomes more possible to make connections with people who come from different background, right? And social networks right now. What is the social networks? It is the degree of diversity in one social network also influence one's opportunity to meet and interact with diverse individuals. It is the degree of diversity. If some of our family members, friends, or friends of friends, already have intercultural or interracial friendships, actually we are more apt to develop interpersonal relationships with people who are in linguistically, racially, and culturally different. We are more likely to view these relationships as normal. So that is the degree of diversity in one social network that influence one's opportunity to meet and interact with diverse individuals. The similarity attractions. The similarity attractions hypothesis posits that we are drawn to people we perceive to be similar to us, such as those who share our first language, race, ethnicity, beliefs, values, religion, worldviews, and group affiliations. And we know that greater perceived similarity facilitates communicative relationships. Interactions, once started, may lead to perceptions of greater similarity or convergence of partners' behaviors, or both. While there are naturally multiple differences in individuals who form intercultural friendships, there are also similarities. Some people are interested to build intercultural relationships, and they are attracted to their intercultural friends due to they feel the similarity. So because it can be easier for them to build a intercultural relationship if they feel or they perceive the similarity. And personality. Intercultural friendship formations has also been linked to a certain personality traits such as extroversion, desire to help others, and mindedness. An extrovert personality has been found to enhance the likelihood of an individual to reach across social boundaries to initiate a relationship with individuals from different backgrounds. While similarities in personality have been found to be the basis of friendship formations. Different personality traits may also work well if they complement one another. Yeah. So even they have different personality, that's no problem, as far as they can complement one another. Yeah. The other another personality traits that is linked to interpersonal communication and intercultural friendship is the WTC. That is the willingness to communicate. A willingness to communicate is believed to develop as we mature, bringing about a global personality-based orientations toward talking. In a second language interactions, level of proficiency and confidence in one's second language ability both influence one's willingness to speak. So if we interact with people who don't have the willingness to communicate, of course it is very difficult to communicate or to build the intercultural relationships, right? Empathy. So what is empathy? Several studies of intercultural friendships reveal that empathy is the ability to understand another person's feelings and point of view. Empathy plays a vital role in determining the quality and longevity of both intercultural and intercultural friendships. Yeah, the cognitive aspect of empathy entails an ability to effectively comprehend distressing situations and to recognize another's emotions and assumes that person's perspective. The affective aspects of empathy requires an individual to experience a vicarious emotional response to others' expressed emotions. The ability to empathize with the perspective of someone from another cultural background is the key ingredient in successful intercultural relationships. Now, the identity recognitions and validations. Understanding the personal meaning of one's self-identities and recognizing the preferred identities of one's communication partners are very crucial. It is a crucial element in the formations of mutually satisfying intercultural friendships. Respecting the preferred self-identities of one's communication partners plays an important role in the development of trust, intercultural friendships. This influences one's willingness to share personal information and spend time together. So learn to appreciate and respect others. The other thing is the uncertainty reductions or anxiety management. One's ability to predict and explain behavior, especially in initial interactions, can influence the formations and quality of intercultural friendships. Yeah. As we become more familiar with our communications partners, we develop more understanding of their communication styles, values, and beliefs, and our ability to predict their behavior increases. The uncertainty reductions or anxiety management posits that the greater our ability to predict and explain our communication partner's behavior, the greater the chance that our relationship will become more intimate. Yeah, and we have to have a predictions of with our communications partners' behavior. Disclosure and relational intimacy. There is a linkage between self-disclosure and friendship development. What is self-disclosure? It refers to the process of deliberately revealing information about oneself that is significant and that would not normally be known by others. Yeah. As self-disclosure increases, our relationship become more intimate. Yeah. And we hear this self-disclosures. It is the process of deliberately revealing informations. So if we feel relational intimacy or disclosure, self-disclosure, it is significant. It is significant and that would not normally be known by others. So it is the element that enhance the potential in intercultural communications. Yeah. So we should have this self-disclosure. And the other elements is that the shared identity and relational maintenance. Successful intercultural bonds depend on one's interpersonal communication skills and also the ability to relate to one's communications partners. Yeah. Here, relational identity is defined as a privately transacted system of understandings that coordinate attitudes, actions, and identities of participants in relationships. While the relational maintenance is the communications aimed at keeping relationships operating smoothly and satisfactorily. This shared identities and relational maintenance requires the ability in intercultural communication requires the ability to read one's partners and recognize when he or she needs more personal space and privacy or more support and closeness. Yeah, here the shared identity and relational maintenance. Yeah, it is the communication, communications aimed at keeping relationship operating smoothly and satisfactory. So this communications requires this ability. So individuals who are more skilled at reading their intercultural partners, of course, they are in a better position to respond appropriately. Next is the intercultural communications competence. This element plays a vital role in opening the potential in intercultural communications. It is an individual's degree of other orientations, sensitivity, and the ability to provide positive feelings, predict success in initiating and managing intercultural friendships. People have varying degrees of intercultural competence. Yeah, those who are interculturally sensitive and possess well-developed intercultural communication skills are apt to be less fearful of interacting across social boundaries. And of course, they are more strongly motivated to establish a friendship with people who differ from them in terms of their first language, gender, religion, country, so on and so forth. And individuals who possess a high level of intercultural sensitivity and intercultural competence are also better positioned to nurture intercultural relationships and deal with misunderstandings that arise. Yeah. Chen 1992 say that an individual's degree of other orientations, sensitivity, and the ability to provide positive feelings predict success in initiating and managing intercultural friendship. So we have to have the intercultural communications competence. We have to enhance this competence. Next is the social acceptance. What is social acceptance here? What is meant and what is the functions of the social acceptance? When we cross boundaries, we are impacted to varying degrees by the beliefs and attitudes that are prevalent in our environment, such as the perceptions of our family members, community, religious figures, the mass media, and the degree of openness toward friendships and romance between people from different backgrounds. The attitudes towards intercultural, interpersonal relationships in one's social networks and community can impact our willingness to initiate interactions with people who are culturally different. It is one's social network and community that can impact our willingness. So our society, our environment really impact and influence our willingness to have or to build intercultural communications. Next is the barriers to intercultural friendships. Researchers have identified a number of internal and external factors that can hamper the development of satisfying intercultural friendships. Yeah. The internal and external factors are limited contact opportunities, differing motives, unmet expectations, anxiety and uncertainty, differences in communication style, differing values, worldviews and perceptions, stereotyping, prejudice and discriminations, language barriers, miscommunication. Now let's discuss one by one. The limited contact opportunities and contact frequency, durations, and quality. This too becomes the internal, the factors that can hamper the development intercultural friendships. The limited contact opportunities, for example, the demographic variables play an important role in formations of intercultural friendships. For example, individuals from a majority culture who live in an area where there are few people with different linguistic or cultural background have a less opportunity to form intercultural friendships than those who reside in a multicultural multilingual neighborhood. Yeah, and then contact frequency, durations, and quality, as well as having sufficient opportunity for intercultural relations. There must be adequate quality time together to grow the relationships. If they move from place to place very frequently, uh, there may there may not be sufficient time, or they don't have enough time, or they may be less motivated to develop deep interpersonal relationships. Yeah, so this influence this is the factors, yeah, that hamper the intercultural communications. Next is the unmet unmet expectations. When people from different cultural backgrounds interact, they may have different understandings of friendship as ideas about what friends should and should not do. Yeah, we have certain expectations. Yeah, and here whether the expectations is uh, uh, is met with our feelings or not, it depends. It really influence our uh, uh, intercultural communications. For example, differing conceptions of friendship can result in confusions and hurt feelings between international students and their, let's say, US American hosts. Conflicting cultural expectations of roles and obligations can lead to misunderstanding. Yeah, in a particular new situations, newcomers may feel let down by other people, by the majority, who are very friendly maybe, but less forthcoming with offers for of a help. Next is the desperate motives and degree of investment. If an intercultural, interpersonal relationship is to flourish, both parties must have a sufficient level of interest, motivation, time, energy, and commitment to interact and nurture the connections. Without this degree of investment, intercultural friendship may not move beyond the category of uh, casual friendships or acquaintance. Yeah. The most important aspect in life is relationship. And my friends have been ripped away from me at a very turn. It takes so much energy and effort to maintain hope in new friendships when you keep losing them all the time. Sometimes I don't see the potential of making a new friend. I see the work involved in getting to know them and quickly analyze whether it's worth it or not. This has been ingrained into my mentality from the routine of making and breaking friendships so frequent. I'm aware that it is a gamble since you can miss out on a lot of friendship. Sandhart 2010, Excited and Jen Jackson wrote this. Yeah. So disparate motives and degree of investment really influence the intercultural, interpersonal relationships. So intercultural, we should have enough. We should have enough level of interest, motivations, yeah, energy, and so on. Next is the anxiety, and uncertainty, and also in cultural differences in communication style. Now let's talk the anxiety and uncertainty. What is that? It is another challenge. It is another challenge in building the cultural relationships. This is the management of anxiety and uncertainty that naturally arise when one interact with individuals who have a different linguistic and cultural background, it is another challenge. Yeah, to manage the anxiety and uncertainty. Now, look at this example by Mandy, a bright Taiwanese university student who wished to join an international exchange program in Dublin, as cited in James Jackson 2014. Because I will be in a foreign country for such a long time, there will be lots of problems. I really want to make friends with people from other countries, but I'm worried that I won't be able to get along well with the local students. I don't know what we can talk about, and I've never used English much outside of class. Differences in communication styles can also impede the development of intercultural friendship and lead to misunderstanding. True, lacking confidence in uh, in Mandy's interpersonal skills and informal English language skills. And then finally, she withdrew from these situations. Her fears and lack of self-esteem also held her back from initiating conversations with international students on her campus. Yeah, and of course, it hampers the intercultural relationships. Next is the cultural differences in communication styles. Differences in communication style can also impede the development of intercultural friendship and lead to misunderstanding. That's very clear. And also the differing values, perceptions, and worldviews. When individuals cross cultural boundaries, they are exposed to differing values, perceptions, and worldviews. And of course, this is also one of the factors that influence the intercultural relationships. Our different values, our different perceptions and worldviews. And next, we also consider the stereotypes, prejudice, and discriminations. And this all we have discussed in the previous chapters, where ethnocentrism can lead to negative perceptions and attitude toward individuals and groups who are different. These all factors can influence the willingness of building, establishing meaningful intercultural, interpersonal relationships. It is also the contested identities and identity misalignment, alignment. In intercultural interactions, one's preferred identity may be misunderstood and contested or challenged. In order for intercultural friendship to work well, actually the individuals involved must recognize and demonstrate respect for each other's preferred self-identities. If they have no respect, then of course no intercultural relationship is built there. Language and cultural barriers and humor and emotional display, it is also the factors. Intercultural friendships, however, often involve the use of second language. It is generally easier to explain our thoughts and feelings to individuals who share the same linguistic and cultural background than when we are talking with other people who are different different in language. Yeah? Expectancy, and violence. It is also the factors. Through the process of primary socializations in one's home environment, we talk about the enculturations previously, we learn to expect certain behaviors in a certain situations, right? Individuals who break social norms of behaviors may be perceived as rude. Insufficient cultural knowledge, such as lack of familiarity with linguistic and cultural norms in other cultures, can hamper intercultural relationships. And the other is the humor and emotional display. The ability to recognize and create humor is vital in the development and maintenance of meaningful intercultural, interpersonal relationships. In humor styles, and the ability to create a humor is very important. It can lead to interactional difficulties and negative reactions. Yeah. Well, actually, humor is a universal phenomenon. But then we have to think carefully how, when, and why it is used. Yeah. People who share a common history and language are apt to use the same forms and styles of language, or at minimum be familiar with them. So they can have very easy to create humor. But then be careful if we create humor, because it can also hamper the intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Emotional display. Emotional display is also factors. It is a cultural variations in the display of feelings and emotions can also barriers to development of satisfying intercultural friendships. Yeah. As people from different cultural background may have learned to express their emotion differently in certain contexts, this can result in misunderstanding too. So emotional display is one of the factors that hamper the intercultural relationship. And limited emotional intelligence and sensitivity. Well, individuals who have limited emotional intelligence and the sensitivity, of course, they have more difficult time building respectful mutual respect and in intercultural friendship. And face work and conflict management. When people from different cultural or linguistic backgrounds interact, misunderstanding and conflict are bound to occur from time to time. Yeah. Without mutual face work and effective conflict management skills and techniques, small problems may spiral into major disputes that can lead to a permanent breakups. And social sanction. The norm can certainly inhibit the formations and maintenance of the cultural friendship. With an open mindset and commitment, people can overcome obstacles and develop long-lasting friendship that cross linguistic and cultural boundaries. Now let's also talk the factors that facilitate or hinder intercultural romantic relationships. Yeah. Romano 2008, cited in Jane Jackson's, compiled a list of factors or characteristics that contribute to successful marriage between people who have different cultural backgrounds. Commitment to the relationship is the first. Second, ability to communicate. The third, sensitivity to each other's needs. The fourth, a liking for the other's cultures. Yeah. And next, flexibility, positive self-image, love as the main marital motive, common goals, spirit of adventure, and sense of humor. These are the factors that contribute to successful marriage. But then we have to also learn the number of other obstacles, the obstacles of the intercultural romantic relationships, that is language barriers, conflicting ideas about marital sex, differing expectations and perceptions of roles and responsibilities, differing ideas about acceptable and displays of affections in public and private domains, conflict management differences, a power imbalance, family pressures and social constraints, differing perceptions of child rearing and unfamiliar beliefs and traditions. Those are the obstacles of the intercultural romantic relationships. Now, how to enhance the intercultural interpersonal relationships? Yeah, Philamek Canals thousands love. There are those individuals from diverse backgrounds who have created a world, at least within their own private lives, that is not broken by the socially constructed boundaries of race, class, gender, sexual orientations, religion, ability, and age. People who have established deep, lasting relationships with others from very different backgrounds. How have these individuals been able to develop successful intercultural, interpersonal relationships? How can you bridge linguistic and cultural barriers to initiate and maintain rewarding and mutually satisfying relationships? The following sessions offers practical suggestions to initiate and optimize relationships with individuals who are linguistically and culturally different. Here it is. If you do not have any intercultural, interpersonal relationships, reflect on the reasons why this is the case. Are your fears or attitudes or those of your family or social networks keeping you from making intercultural connections? If yes, challenge yourself to leave your comfort zone and initiate a relationship with someone from a different linguistic and cultural background, whether face-to-face or online. Bear in mind that intercultural connections must be genuine and respectful if they are to be meaningful. Perceptions of relationship differ across culture. So consider your own views and expectations and how these ideas form. How might this understanding differ from those of intercultural partners? Third, do not assume that you or your intercultural friend or partners is an ambassador of a particular linguistic or cultural group. When you get to know someone from another linguistic or cultural background, you are developing an interpersonal relationship with an individual. Yeah. And next is be attentive. Yeah. Be attentive to differences in disclosure norms, values, verbal and non-verbal behaviors. Yeah. And make an effort to develop relational intimacy, right? And next, work to eliminate any personal biases and prejudice that you may have that could negatively impact on your intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Next is recognize the importance of respect and genuine concern in intercultural friendships and romances. Are you attentive to the needs of your communication partners or overly focused on your own interests? Assess your level of intercultural sensitivity and intercultural communications apprehensions. Based on what you have learned in this book and in this class and elsewhere, consider constructive ways to overcome impediments to the development of healthy intercultural interpersonal relationships. And also make a personal commitment to devote the time necessary to enhance your personal intercultural communication skill to develop meaningful relationships. Those are the things, the factors that can enhance intercultural, interpersonal relationships. Those are the practical suggestions that can be used to enhance our intercultural, interpersonal relationships. These are written in the Jackson's 2014. Yeah, and this is the reference of this class. And we are right now in the end of this today's meeting. So we'll be meeting in the next sessions with different topic. So thank you so much for today, and goodbye.